Welcome to the Southwark Cathedral podcast and the series The World Needs More Poetry. And today I'm delighted to be joined here by Anna Rastelli. Hello.
Hi.
Anna, for our audiences, tell us who you are, a little bit about yourself.
Yep, so I am a writer, poet, director, theatre director, and I also work at Southwark Cathedral. I'm an event steward and a welcomer, so you might see me around.
How long have you been doing that for?
I've been at the cathedral for just over 3 years, and I've gone into various different roles throughout my time.
And one of the reasons you're here with me now is because a little while ago you asked about doing a couple of poetry evenings here. Do you want to just tell us about?
Yeah, I think Southwark Cathedral is a very exciting place, not just for like theology, but also history and history and literature specifically. And I thought there would be a good market's the wrong word, but like for queer people to share their own poetry in a church, which I think is incredibly important. For queer people to feel welcomed in after perhaps having difficult pasts with religion, and that's a whole other conversation in itself. I ran a couple of queer poetry evenings at the church, and it was great. I mean, we didn't have too many people coming, but that made it feel really lovely and intimate. And afterwards people would just be like, oh, I've never shared my poetry before and now I feel like I can, or I've never talked about being trans, for example, in a church and felt like that would be a safe thing to do. And so it was really rewarding in that sense, but also built a lovely little community.
That's great. Thank you for doing that. So you've chosen a poem and it just so happens to be rather seasonal in some ways.
Yes, indeed.
What have you chosen?
I've chosen In the Bleak Midwinter, or also known as A Christmas Carol by Christina Rossetti.
So what we do is I ask you to read it, then we'll have a little chat, and right at the end you'll read it again so that people can hear it after we've spoken about it. But would you like to read In the Bleak Midwinter?
Yes, of course. In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan. Earth stood hard as iron, water like a stone. Snow had fallen, snow on snow, snow on snow, in the bleak midwinter long ago. Our God, heaven cannot hold him, nor earth sustain. Heaven and earth shall flee away when he comes to reign. In the bleak midwinter, a stable place sufficed, the Lord God Almighty, Jesus Christ. Enough for him whom cherubim worship night and day, breast full of milk and a manger full of hay. Enough for him whose angels fall before the ox and ass and camel which adore. Angels and archangels may have gathered there, cherubim and seraphim thronged the air, but his mother only, in her maiden bliss, worshipped the beloved with a kiss. What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. Yet, what can I give him? Give my heart.
Beautiful, thank you. Why that poem?
I've always been a massive fan of gothic literature, gothic poetry. And I also studied Christina Rossetti's works when I was doing my English A-level. So although we didn't study this poem in particular, I've always adored her writing. And I remember when I was a teenager finding out then she also wrote In the Bleak Midwinter, or A Christmas Carol. I was like, this is a perfect subsection of, it's one of my favourite Christmas carols, hymns, and she's one of my favourite poets. So to me, it's just a lovely summary of her legacy, but also showcases her writing and also how far we've come since she wrote the poem herself.
And it's been set to music by several people, most famously by Holst,
Yes,
which
yeah.
we sing it to, but also by people like Harold Dark. Do you approve of the way it's been set to music?
I love it.
Yeah.
If anything, it's hard to read out loud. It's a bit cruel because I want to follow like the pentameter of Holst's, you know, but then it has to be acknowledged as its own thing, you know, as its own poem before Holst like jazzed it up, as it were.
It's a poem I always find quite difficult to sing because my grandfather, who brought me up, it was his favourite, and he always used to love that last verse.
Yes,
and
that's my favourite.
He used to quote it, you know, what can I give him?
Yeah.
Give my heart. And every time I get to that verse, that's my Christmas moment where I have to take a deep breath, because I always remember it.
I think it's just beautiful, the way she's written it.
So, Christina Rossetti, 1830 to 1894. What do we need to know about her for this podcast?
Well, she was an interesting figure, really. In her personal life, she was a devout Christian, but then had like a massive crisis of faith in the 60s. The 1860s, by the way, and with the Beatles. In the 1860s, but she came back around. But also her contemporaries were like Emily Barrett Browning, who was another phenomenal poet. Also, she came a bit before Christina Rossetti, but it was almost predicted that she'd be the next Emily Barrett Browning. And even though she didn't quite make it to that height, I don't think it's necessary, because also they were looking for a new female poet, and it's like that we can have multiple women in a room. Do you know what I mean? I know that's like quite far from Victorian ideology, but there we go. Also, she had like a lot of she was a muse to a lot of people, in terms of like her brother Dante, when he would paint her frequently, her and her sister, and like Lord Byron was hanging about, and her brother created the pre-Raphaelite literature movement. So there was tons of things, like she was a nepo baby, one may say. There was tons of material for her to work with and circles for her to move in.
Hugely admired. I mean, people like Manley Hopkins and Tennyson all acclaimed her very highly.
Yeah.
So this was no meagre poet who's, you know, people talk about because she was a woman in the Victorian period.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is somebody of genuine skill who got to be acknowledged because of her talent, and she uses lots of different poetic forms through her life.
Indeed.
Quite imaginative and exploratory in that way. She was an Anglo-Catholic Christian. She was a member of the Church of England, drawn to that more Catholic tradition, but did have this crisis of faith, which always difficult to understand from within, isn't it? What's going on exactly? But the themes that seem to emerge are a sense of unworthiness, shame, maybe. Do we know much more about that in her?
Well, I mean, she was very devoted. She was a very, very devoted Christian. So I think the crisis of faith for her must have been like earth-shattering, because at this point she was an unmarried woman. She had 3 different proposals that she all turned down because they didn't align with her own personal religious beliefs and way of living. Her sister was a nun, you know, but then for her to have this crisis of faith, it must have been like devastating for her, because she dedicated her entire life to something that she was beginning to doubt. I can only imagine how hard it was.
She was also keen, wasn't she, to sort of translate her faith into, well, she volunteered, I think, in a penitentiary.
Yes, she did, for fallen women.
For fallen women, which means prostitutes,
those who have children
Unmarried
outside of
women,
marriage,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, all the like.
Yes.
Yeah, her and her sister would volunteer there as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why this poem particular? I mean, she wrote a lot of devotional and romantic poems for children. I suppose her most famous of the day would be Goblin Market, of course.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
why this poem in particular?
I think I just come back to the final stanza. I think the whole poem in itself is beautiful, but whenever I think of my favourite poem, I think of the final stanza. Like, what can I give him? Give him my heart. It's just beautiful. And I think it's so like reminiscent of today and how, you know, we're in a financial low and we're all trying to do our best and try not to be too grumpy with each other and all of this, and all we can do is give each other our hearts in a way, because for a lot of people we don't have much else. And I just think for her to talk about the baby Jesus and her being like, I will give him my heart, that's all I can give him, but it will be enough, I think is such a beautiful sentiment. You know, like we all know about gold, frankincense and myrrh, and we all know about the stars in the sky and the angels, but like at the end of the day, you give him, you give someone, you give everyone your heart, your love, and that is enough. It's beautiful to me.
And the poem, doesn't it, although it talks about the majesty and heaven cannot hold him and angels and they're all there, but actually it calls us back to that simplicity, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And the word bleak, midwinter, drawing on this idea that, you know, somehow Jesus was born in the snow. But it seems that the poem itself is working to distill towards the truth of the incarnation, that as one saint put it, you know, a proud humanity can only ever be saved by a humble God.
Well, exactly, you know. And I think the fact that it was a bleak midwinter, I think it really just reminds us of how, you know, Mary and Joseph as refugees living in a, not even living in a stable, like taking refuge in a stable, having a child, like the only thing to their name was this claim that their child would be the Son of God, you know. And I think the bleak midwinter and giving him a heart, I think that is so, that is like, it's so, it is humble. And I think that's all it needs to be, you know, especially within Catholicism, Anglo-Catholicism, you know, like you walk into a church and you're kind of overwhelmed by the gold and the glass and all of that, right? And it's like, it doesn't have to, it can be, if you want it to be, it can be that, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be whatever you want it to be, you know.
Yes, and I like your calling us back to the fact that even if you don't have much to give, you do have a heart.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, you're of a much younger generation to me, what do you think people of your generation who might find themselves in a church at Christmas, what do you think they're looking for at the moment?
Well, I can tell you what I would look for. When I would go to Christmas services, I would first of all look for a sense of belonging, not necessarily in terms of religiously, just community. I think community in a church is like one of the greatest achievements of the church is the community. And I think that is something that is really lacking in the rest of London and the rest of, you know, society. I'd look for a sense of community. I'd look for a not acceptance necessarily, because seeking acceptance from a building or a person in a cloak or whatever is interesting, but like more so a feeling of like, oh, I can sit here and I can be here, whoever I am, however I am, and that be not even allowed, but not even considered that it wouldn't be allowed, you know. That's definitely what I looked for. I think people of my generation coming into a church, they make a choice to come into a church, because my generation, I would say, we are like, a lot of us weren't raised in the church. I mean, I'm come from Irish Italian background, so Catholicism has always been hanging over my head, but it doesn't mean I went to church every Sunday. So I think it's, if you're in a church, you're there for a reason, because you've taken yourself there. So yeah, I think it's just...
And do you think that image of giving your heart to something, someone, some cause, is one of the longings of younger people at the moment, because there's so much around that really isn't very good for the human heart?
Yes, definitely. I mean, seeing, this is going to sound so gauche, but like opening Instagram and every story is a different cause needing money, a different person doing a run. One of my contemporaries from university is currently on a hunger strike in prison to end the occupation in Palestine, you know. So there's so much, and it's overwhelming that we can't, you know, be in all places at once. We have not a lot of money because we're waitresses, or we're, you know, trying to survive in London and cost of living, but then we know that people are much worse off than us, or we know, you know, it's so hard, it's so overwhelming all the time. And I can't, unfortunately, offer a light in that. I guess the light in that is that it does, although it's hard and depressing, and, you know, there's a lot of, it shows that we all have compassion, and it shows that compassion is what we have. What we have is a heart. And that if that's the only positive we can bring out of it, is kind of we restore faith in our own humanity a bit, then that's the best we can do.
Because when I, in my previous work, was amongst students, and people of my generation often are a bit sniffy about students. You know, you get all the sort of, oh, they don't work as like I used to work, and all that stuff. But I always used to say, I find students at the moment, certainly the ones I was with, very serious about values and the search for them, and about values that might navigate your life. That doesn't mean that they didn't get drunk occasionally, and that they didn't, you know, find themselves in places and situations they might regret a bit. However, I found them a searching group of people, and were in some ways, I think, willing to give religion, and my religion, not a second chance, but a sort of first chance, because they didn't know much about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So come on, tell me why, if I give you a microphone, I might need to listen, sort of approach.
Absolutely.
And that I found quite liberating, actually, because it made me seek a language that came from the beginning, rather than me try to resuscitate. And I was able to do that, I think, because I felt they were serious.
Yeah, I mean, one thing my generation are is very serious, but also we're not afraid to argue, I would say. You know, a 21-year-old walks into a church, asks a load of questions, and if they're not satisfied with the answer, they leave, and I think that's fair. We don't follow instructions blindly anymore. We go out there and find out for ourselves. And I'm not saying we're the first generation to do that, but I'm saying we're very stubborn. You know. And of course, opinions are mobile now and immediate and everywhere. So trying to distill the wisdom from the noise
is quite a journey.
Yeah, and trying to pick is the wrong word, but knowing who to put your trust in to open up about yourself as well is difficult.
And for all those reasons that we've just said, I mean, that's why I was also struck by your choice of this poem, because I thought, well, I mean, we all are finding or looking for somewhere to place our heart, somewhere that feels a bit like a homecoming.
Yeah.
But I think particularly at the moment that longing is pretty deep.
It is. It is. I mean, it's a bleak. It's not just Christmas, is it? December. December's not just Christmas. It's also a bleak midwinter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she sums it up perfectly.
She is, of course, remembered in the Church of England calendar.
Yes.
She has a day.
Is it the 27th of April?
And I don't know why that is, because she was born and died in December.
Yeah. They must have had an opening.
There must have been something going on in April. I don't know.
We can't do then because Jesus was born.
Yes. We'll do April. But yes, I'm very pleased that there she is, a woman, a poet, somebody who was honest about a crisis in faith.
Yeah. Somebody
who didn't think it was just about getting your piety or your thinking right, but it needed putting into action.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think she's an important person to have there. Is there anything else about this poem that you want to say that you haven't?
Well, I think it's hard to acknowledge the poem without acknowledging the hymn.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like my poetry, I'm a songwriter. So my poetry is, I will write a poem or something poetic and I will put it to music, you know. And I do think that is a huge part of why I love this poem so much, is because I love the way it's been set to music and sung and celebrated.
And because it has, people can quote it. Because as you sing it, so you learn it.
Exactly. I think I could, well, please don't test me on this, but I reckon I could give it a good go.
Yes, exactly.
Reading it off by heart, because it's been something I've been singing since I was a child before I really knew the meaning of the words.
Yeah.
You know, and then I learnt the meaning of the words, and then I learnt them all over again when I studied Christina Rossetti.
Yeah. And the importance of hymns and carols in instilling in people the belief of the church.
Yeah.
By helping them remember phrases and verses is often forgotten, but hymns have been absolutely vital to the development of faith, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, there's singing and speaking is the oldest form of storytelling, and there's a reason for it, because that is what is the most accessible. It's the easiest for your memory, you know. So I think, so like having her work be immortalized, really, as a Christmas hymn, as a Christmas carol, and spreading that her message of giving your heart, and that's enough, you know, every year. I think it's a joy to listen to.
So I'm going to ask you to read it again, but just before I do, I mean, this idea of humility, which I think is very much at the heart of this poem, I was struck that humility, that sense of, look, all that matters here is my inner life, my heart, that's all I can offer. And once I've offered it, it's sort of over to him.
Yes, yeah.
There's nothing I can do to make myself more desirable, you know, more treasured in his view. I just simply have to offer my heart. And she wrote a song which I'm just going to read before you read your poem again, because I think it just shows how that humility in her remained right to the end. And she wrote, "When I am dead, my dearest, sing no sad songs for me. Plant thou no roses at my head, nor shady cypress tree. Be the green grass above me with showers and dewdrops wet. And if thou wilt, remember, and if thou wilt, forget. I shall not see the shadows, I shall not feel the rain. I shall not hear the nightingale sing on as if in pain. And dreaming through the twilight that doth not rise nor set, haply I may remember, and haply may forget.
I love it. The song "When I Am Dead, My Dearest" is another one of my favourites. And if thou wilt remember, and if thou wilt forget, is just a beautiful, little,
and has a heart of humility in that, because we're all trying desperately to be remembered, aren't we, at the moment?
Yeah.
Another
Legacy,
tombstone, another legacy, another building goes up.
Yeah.
But here she's saying, and if thou wilt forget.
Yeah. And
anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wish all our listeners a very happy Christmas.
Absolutely.
And they're all going to be thinking of you when we sing in the Bleak Midwinter. Would you like to read it again to us?
I'd love to. I also encourage anybody to try and read this out loud without singing it, because it's very hard. Okay. In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan. Earth stood hard as iron, water like a stone. Snow had fallen, snow on snow, snow on snow, in the bleak midwinter, long ago. Our God, heaven cannot hold him, nor earth sustain. Heaven and earth shall flee away when he comes to reign. In the bleak midwinter, a stable place sufficed, the Lord God Almighty, Jesus Christ. Enough for him whom cherubim worship night and day, breast full of milk and manger full of hay, enough for him whom angels fall before, the ox and ass and camel which adore. Angels and archangels may have gathered there, cherubim and seraphim thronged the air. But his mother only, in her maiden bliss, worshipped the beloved with a kiss. What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. Yet what can I give him? Give my heart.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you also for all the welcoming you do in the cathedral, for all the stewarding of events. And
Yes.
I wish you really happy and peaceful Christmas and a lot of singing of this.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.